it's interesting. Like when you look at the literature, there's not a lot of studies being done to show that diet has a big impact upon either cystic acne and or pimples. However, often I'll find that diet will play a big role when we look at skin conditions. Like our skin cells turn over every 6 weeks, so the cell turnover is quite high. The more you can improve your diet, I believe the better the quality of your skin is going to be generally. Some people sort of say that cutting out your cereals and grains, because of the effect on like cereals and grains and sugar.
Peter Mullen, our resident naturopath, and Peter, this afternoon talking about acne and pimples. I'm noticing that you have the clear skin everywhere. There's not a blemish, not a mark, not a scratch, no nothing. So, are you the right person to be talking to us about this, or maybe you are?
I think I might be.
Yeah.
And actually, I didn't have much trouble with acne as a kid. Like I do think there's a bit of a genetic predisposition for people that get that really serious cystic sort of acne.
Okay.
It does tend to run in families. But a lot of people will get variations of that. A lot of people will get pimples growing up as well. And, there's been a lot of talk about, diet and lifestyle and what some of the contributing factors are. And it's interesting. Some of the medical sites say that, diet's not been proven to have any impact upon acne and or pimples. But, from my experience, we're going to cover some of the things that I've found to be really effective.
Sure. So I guess to start with, we hear the term acne, we hear pimples, and people can lump it all in as one thing. But can you break down firstly some of the differences between them?
Yeah, for sure. And there's many different causes, as we said. Looking at where the location of where the pimples or the acne occur gives us clues as to what some of the drivers might be. But full on, they're really, really severe-looking acne, where you're getting big cysts coming up under the skin, is directly attributed to the rise of hormones. So what happens in puberty, you get an increase of these androgen hormones. Women that have, which are the male hormones, women that have polycystic ovarian syndrome will also get an increase in these male hormones. These male hormones increase the production of sebum or oil in the glands under the skin, and this increase in sebum causes the pores to become bigger. And over time, what happens, the pores clog up, and then you get bacteria sort of grow in the area, and then you get the infected cysts or pimples. So, the hormonal change is the big driver for this increase in sebum production.
Which kind of makes sense that it becomes a big thing as you're becoming a teenager and through those years, because everything's changing.
All those hormonal changes. So this is where I think it probably does run in families a bit. I've noticed that, sebum production and earwax are very similar in structure. So a lot of kids that have acne will also have bad earwax production because they're just producing too much of this sebum.
Okay, that's very interesting. They're both pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah, kind of, sort of.
So I guess as well, there are a lot of other physiological things that can go on behind the scenes if you have a predisposition to this. You can be very anxious, you can be self-conscious, and those other underlying things take place as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for a lot of kids, it is a confidence thing. And the challenge is that, like on the market, a lot of the medication for acne is quite drastic.
Mm-hmm.
There can be a lot of side effects associated with it as well, whether it's antibiotics or vitamin A derivatives that, can really, lead to symptoms of depression and all sorts of things. So, seeing a naturopath is always the first port of call in, finding out if there's something you can do naturally first. Now, one of the interesting things is so pimples are different to acne. So pimples are more, they're minor blockages in the skin. They're not so much associated with the bigger pore size, so you don't have the androgen drive as much.
It's not a systemic, basically.
It's not such a systemic thing. And when we think about pimples, people that get pimples or even acne more related to the jawline is more hormonal and lymphatic system. While pimples on the forehead tend to relate more to stress. So again, depending on where the pimples are, gives us clues. A lot of people that get the full-on cystic acne also get acne like across their shoulders and back, sometimes on their chest as well. So anywhere where these oil-producing glands sit, you can get this increased production and then the infection and the cycle. And one of the long-term problems, obviously, is the psychological stress, of having acne, particularly if it's really bad, but also the scarring as well. So that's the concern for a lot of kids, is they want to try and get on top of it and treat it quickly before you end up with scar tissue that, might take years to really sort out down the track.
If ever.
Yeah, yeah.
You want to sort of look at some of the ways that we could and should be treating this. You say, first off, that perhaps medication should not be our first port of call. What is it with the medications that you'd like to point out with us today?
Well, probably one of the common medications prescribed for, because of the hormonal changes, oftentimes if you go and see someone that's just going to prescribe medication, for women they'll use the contraceptive pill to try and override the production of the male or the androgens, and probably an antibiotic combined with that as well. So that's often the first port of call. The problem with those is both of those, I think, is a little bit heavy-handed if you haven't tried some natural methods first. Being on the pill too young, the pill is it's a useful medication. It helps a lot of people. Very good for birth control. But if you don't need to be taking it, it's still putting excess synthetic hormone into your system that we don't know what the long-term effects of that are going to be. And then antibiotics, and there's been so much information out about, everybody's so much more familiar with the effects of gut and gut health and how important a healthy microbiome or gut flora balance is. So taking antibiotics unnecessarily, obviously, again, is going to upset gut and cause, major more issues, or maybe more issues down the track.
Well, would it be fair also to say, Peter, that by using medications that, yes, you're treating the symptom but not necessarily the cause? Is that where you're
pretty
going?
much. Pretty much. In that case, what you're doing is you're waiting for the person to get old enough maybe that their hormones are more settled and you're not going to get that increased sebum production. So you're not really fixing the problem. You're sort of just masking it in some respects. And then other medication, if that is not effective enough, then there's a certain type of drug they use, which is a derivative of vitamin A, but it's a synthetic form. And again, that can cause a lot of side effects and issues as well. So I do see kids that are taking medication, and I never take them off their medication straight away until we make sure that everything else is covered and that they're doing really well. But yeah, definitely, if you've got a child or a grandchild, or you yourself are suffering from acne, it's worthwhile trying some natural things first. Something that I find works really well for adult acne, because I see people in their 50s that still getting acne, but not quite the same as that, not that real androgen-driven acne that you get, when you're a teenager and early 20s. And there's a herbal tablet that I use called Golden Seal. And Golden Seal is my version of a natural antibiotic. It's really good for mucous membranes. It's good particularly for the bacteria associated with acne. So there are a lot of really good alternatives out there.
So moving to for the alternative side of treating it, some other things we can do. Are there things that we should be looking at dietary-wise, perhaps?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. Like when you look at the literature, there's not a lot of studies being done to show that diet has a big impact upon either cystic acne and or pimples. However, often I'll find that diet will play a big role when we look at skin conditions. Like our skin cells turn over every 6 weeks, so the cell turnover is quite high. The more you can improve your diet, I believe the better the quality of your skin is going to be generally. Some people sort of say that cutting out your cereals and grains, because of the effect on like cereals and grains and sugar, any excess carbohydrate, the sugar is going to feed any abnormal bacterial levels in the body. So you want to cut out the sugar. Cereals and grains do have a big impact in releasing even more sugar into the body. There's the effective thing, hormones like insulin. So you want to try and get your diet as low carb as possible. So off your cereals and grains. So that's, white flour, white bread, but any cereals and grains is worthwhile trying to reduce if you've got serious acne.
You're killing us, Peter. Sorry. Cereals and breads out the window.
Yeah. And people don't always think of that. In the past, I find some people respond to trying to get off dairy if they've got too much milk. I'm not sure whether it's the fat or the lactose in the milk, but varying debates around whether chocolate and acne and pimple, the research sort of suggests that chocolate doesn't have an impact, but I think it's going to have an impact if someone is sugar sensitive. You want to cut out any extra sugar, so chocolate, unfortunately, would be included in that as well.
Okay, now that you've belted us around the head, what about water? Is that going to help having a bit more of that?
The skin, the body, the cells in our body are comprised of water, so making sure you're drinking plenty of water obviously is going to make a big difference. From a supplement point of view, I find a lot of people that get cystic acne respond really well initially to vitamin C and zinc. Vitamin C has a bit of a natural antioxidant effect. It reduces allergy and inflammation associated with irritated skin, and it's also antibacterial, helps to boost the immune system to fight bacteria. And zinc is really important for healing and repairing the skin as well, and again helping the immune system. So I find that's my first port of call for anyone that's got any sort of skin condition, even if it's eczema, acne, pimples, is always to get them on zinc and see if they're low, which a lot of people tend to be.
2NURFM, as we continue with health and well-being, Peter Mullen, he's coming in looking $1 million, looked like he stepped straight out of a men's fashion magazine. Look, face, nice smiley face, no blemishes, nothing on there. He's going to talk to us about acne and pimples, as he has been, Peter. Look, we've been talking about some of the things that we can do, dietary-wise. There are a few other basics, though, to try and combat acne and pimples that we possibly should be doing, and one simply involves us getting outside.
Yeah, absolutely. Getting some sunlight, warmer weather. Swimming in the salt water, vitamin D, getting your vitamin D levels checked if you're worried about skin, whether that's allergy or whether you're getting infections like acne. Because so many people, it's crazy, but so many of us are low in vitamin D. Such an important vitamin because we are so sun protective these days. So
that's a double two-edged sword, isn't it? Because no one wants to get melanoma or other skin cancers,
yeah,
so
absolutely.
We run away from the sun, but we kind of need it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then it's things like other risk factors can be, if you're acne prone, if you work in a takeaway shop where there's a lot of around greasy food and oil in the air, that's going to be an aggravator for your skin. The type of makeup you use as well, whether you're clogging pores up. Not a lot of research about this, but, the theory is that you want to use products maybe that aren't as pore clogging, and you want to make sure that you do wash your face well, before you go to bed, so you do unclog those pores, using as natural skincare products as possible. Things like making sure your makeup brushes and that are clean, that you wash your brushes between use as well, so you're not sort of transferring bacteria.
There's a lot of tricks there, isn't it? Because those who you come into their teenage years and they're prone to all this sort of stuff, you're basically hitting them over the head, because at least half are working in a takeaway store somewhere, getting a bit of pocket money, and at least a third are starting to experiment with makeup and all of that. Yeah. And it's like all the things that you're now doing are possibly
aggravating things. And then you think about diet of a lot of teenagers as well, not all adolescents. Or
I've got 20s. Good metabolism, so I can have 10 pies. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is the challenge. You're right there. And also the other big thing for this age group is or three things: sleep. So sleep really is the best anti-inflammatory thing that we can possibly do. So many of these kids are late hours. They'll stay up half the night, sleeping during the day. Their body clock's all out of whack. So good quality sleep, the hours before midnight, is going to be more anti-inflammatory. The second thing is alcohol. Alcohol for these kids that have this really bad cystic acne is going to be a no-no. Alcohol generally for skin conditions is not great, dries the skin out, and exacerbates or compromises the immune system basically. And the third thing is stress. Stress is a big aggravator for pimples, and particularly for this sort of cystic acne as well. So
with all of that combined, when you think of these things being such big drivers for acne, it's just a wonder anybody goes through without it.
Yeah, well, again,
takeaway food, bad diet, learning and exploring and experimenting with alcohol, makeup, bad sleep.
Yeah, unfortunately, culturally, that's the way teenagers' lives tend to go, isn't it? But if they start off with having that hereditary predisposition, they're definitely going to have more of a challenge. And the unfortunate thing is, if they don't make those lifestyle changes, the only or take natural medicines, the only alternative is those stronger drugs, which can have those side effects. So, yeah, no, it's a challenge.
It can
definitely
be
a challenge.
Yeah, Peter, some interesting words as always. Thank you for coming in with us this week. Now, there are some talks that are happening around and about with you guys. The first one is the thyroid. So I know people have been thinking about that one, but that one's fully booked out on February the 20th. You've got a weight loss one coming up Feb 27.
Yep, February 27th. We did our first weight loss talk for the year in end of Jan, and had a great turnout to that free talk. So we're putting another one on. There's limited seating again. It's already filling up fast. So if anyone's keen to come along, definitely get online and check that out. And what that one's about is just really really trying to nail home that message about carbohydrates, and the approach we're recommending is a ketogenic style of eating, and some really great tips that even if people don't want to get on board with the full weight loss idea, there's some really good tips just about healthy eating and how we should be all managing our carbohydrate input.
And with kids all back at school, time to start thinking about kids' health. March 13, you've got that one covered.
Yeah, definitely. Kids' health is one of my favourite areas of practice, and we see a lot of kids the Kids' Health Talk is all about how to help your kids, reach their potential, not just health-wise and not getting sick, but also mentally and emotionally as well with, all the challenges kids face these days.
Peter Robbins becoming a Anthony Robbins type of second very soon. You can do it. I believe in you. And next week on the radio, I'll be back talking thyroid. What do you got for us next week there, Peter?
Yeah, we're just focusing on Hashimoto's. Like a couple of times we've done this segment similar to this before. It'll be a bit different next week. But we always seem to get a lot of calls about thyroid and Hashimoto. So I thought we'll revisit that, particularly while we're talking about weight and difficulty losing weight as well. And again, it's a really growing concern, the number of people being diagnosed with autoimmune thyroid. So
a great talk with Peter Mullen next week on health and wellbeing. If you'd like some more details, you can make your way to mullenhealth.com.au. Peter, as always, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Mark. Lovely to see you again.
We'll catch you next week on health and wellbeing, 2NURFM 103.7.